Okay. Welcome, everyone. I think we'll get started because this session is quite short. I just wanted to say thank you for joining us at this session about culture, values, and spiritual perspectives for mobilizing action towards just food systems transition. And I'm thrilled to be here with many distinguished speakers who will share some remarks about this very interesting topic shortly. And so working together towards a food systems transition will require the coming together of both scientific and technological advances alongside values and principles. And that regardless of one's backgrounds or personal beliefs, ensuring a more sustainable and prosperous future for all of humanity and food systems that reflect these values will lie in our ability to come together, to collaborate, and to envision what and how these values can be put into action. And so the format of this event, we will have some opening remarks, then it will be followed by a panel of speakers. Then we will have some questions to pose to the audience, and then we will conclude with some closing remarks. And so to start us off, we will have Thaisa, who will come up here and say some opening remarks. And Thaisa, at just 13 years old, is an active and bold advocate for the rights of Indigenous people and girls, and an advocate for preserving the Amazon's biodiversity. Thank you. Thaisa comes from the small village of Manacapuru, Brazil, and is part of the Cambeba people who are known for their political activism to protect the rights of Indigenous people. She is part of the MJPOP and NUCA Children's Network, who empower to promote and demand children's rights and active citizenship. So I'll welcome her up now to say some remarks.
Kateruka Aitashira Tucupi, Kakira Neritama Tururu Cariú. Olá, me chamo Thaisa, tenho 13 anos e pertenço ao povo Mágua Cambebe.
I'm 30 years old and I belong to the Cambeba.
Hello. Hi, I'm Thaisa. I'm 13 years old and I'm part of the Cambeba people.
Boa tarde, muito obrigada pelo convite a este evento. Sinto-me grata e orgulhosa por falar em nome das crianças da Amazônia.
I feel grateful and proud to speak on behalf of the children of the Amazon, especially the indigenous children.
Especialmente as crianças indígenas, afetadas não apenas pelas mudanças climáticas, mas também por sistemas alimentares desiguais que não permitem o nosso acesso a alimentos saudáveis.
Especially the indigenous children affected by climate change and food systems that deny us access to healthy food despite the abundance of natural wealth in our forests.
Apesar da abundância da riqueza natural em nossa floresta, estou confiante de que uma produção de alimentos que respeite a cultura dos povos indígenas, que seja baseada em valores que respeite o meio ambiente, pode fazer a diferença.
I believe that a food production that respects the culture of indigenous peoples is based on values and respects the environment, and this can make a difference.
Hoje, quero compartilhar com vocês uma realidade que clama por nossa atenção e ação imediata.
Today, I want to share with you a reality that calls for our immediate attention and action.
Estou aqui para falar sobre as riquezas naturais e a pobreza material que assolam nossa população, e especialmente a região amazônica.
I am here to talk about the natural richness and material poverty that affects our population, especially in the Amazon region.
É um tema que não podemos mais ignorar, pois está diferente ligado ao futuro da nossa geração.
This is something we can no longer ignore, and this is linked to the future of my people.
A Amazônia é um tesouro natural inestimável e abençoado com uma biodiversidade sem igual.
The Amazon is an unparalleled, unvaluable natural treasure and is blessed with amazing biodiversity.
Suas florestas exuberantes, rios majestosos,
Its forests, majestic rivers, and diverse fauna
e a fauna diversas são um presente da natureza para todos nós.
these are a gift of the nature for all of us.
No entanto, essa riqueza contrasta de forma gritante com a triste realidade da pobreza material enfrentada por muitos de nós habitantes.
But this wealth is contrasting with the sad reality of poverty that is faced by many of our inhabitants.
Se a Amazônia fosse um país, seria um dos países mais pobres da América Latina, com 36% da população em condições de pobreza e subnutrição superando a casa dos 25%.
If the Amazon was a country, it would be one of the poorest in Latin America and the Caribbean, with 36% of its populations in poverty and malnutrition over 20%.
A realidade da Amazônia está mudando rapidamente e não é para melhor. A seca implacável e as queimadas descontroladas têm deixado nossa floresta doente e vulnerável.
The reality in the Amazon is changing quickly and not for the good. Drought is uncontrolled and wildfires is leaving our forests sick and vulnerable.
Testemunhamos a devastação de vastas áreas verdes, onde antes reinava a vida em sua forma mais exuberante.
We are witnessing the destruction of the green areas where once thrived with exuberant forms of life.
O fogo consome tudo em seu caminho, deixando apenas cinzas e desolação.
Fire is destroying everything, leaving only ashes and destruction.
Essa mudança na paisagem tem um impacto profundo nas comunidades locais. O acesso a alimentos básicos torna-se cada vez mais limitado.
This change in the landscape is impacting local communities. Access to basic food is at risk and limited, and the food security of our families is also at risk.
Colocando em risco a segurança alimentar de nossas famílias.
Posing a risk for the food security of our families.
A fome se espalha como uma sombra, privando as pessoas da sua dignidade básica.
Hunger is spreading like a shadow, depriving people from their basic dignity.
A alimentação é um direito fundamental das crianças. Há comida suficiente no mundo para que nenhuma criança passe fome, mas a distribuição é desigual. Isso deve trocar.
Food is an essential right of children. There is enough food in the world for no child to be hungry, but the distribution is unequal.
As crianças são aquelas que carregam o peso mais pesado dessa realidade cruel. A falta de acesso a alimentos adequados compromete seu crescimento saudável e o desenvolvimento pleno.
Children are bearing the heaviest burden of this reality. The lack of access to food is putting at risk their healthy growth and the full development of children.
Seus sonhos são abafados pela desnutrição e pela falta de oportunidade. Seus direitos fundamentais são violados diante de nossos olhos.
Their dreams are being destroyed by malnutrition and lack of opportunities. Their rights are being violated before our eyes.
Além disso, há uma questão ainda mais sombria que devemos enfrentar:
But there is even a darker issue we must confront.
o risco de proteção enfrentado pelas crianças em nossa região.
The risk of protection faced by children in our region.
A exploração e abuso sexual desses seres inocentes são uma realidade alarmante.
Exploitation and sexual abuse of innocent children is alarming.
A busca implacável por recursos naturais atrai indivíduos que se aproveitam da vulnerabilidade das crianças indefesas.
The pursuit of natural resources uncontrollably is attracting individuals who are taking advantage of the vulnerability of children.
Se a Amazônia fosse o país, seria o país da região com os maiores índices de exploração, trata e abusos infantis.
If the Amazon were a country, it would have the highest rates of exploitation, trafficking, and child abuse in the region.
Essa é uma ferida profunda em nossa sociedade, uma chega que não pode ser ignorada ou silenciada.
This is harming our society, and this cannot be longer ignored or silenced.
Devemos agir com coragem e determinação para proteger nossas crianças, e o nosso dever é garantir que elas cresçam em um ambiente seguro e saudável.
We must act with courage and determination to protect our children. We must ensure that they grow up in a safe and healthy environment. where their rights are respected and protected.
onde seus direitos sejam respeitados e protegidos, e garantir o seu direito à alimentação.
Their rights must be respected and protected, and ensuring their right to food and nutrition.
Precisamos fortalecer nossas comunidades, educar sobre os direitos da criança e implementar políticas governamentais e eficazes para combater a fome e a exploração e o abuso sexual.
We need to strengthen our communities, educate about children's rights, and implement government policies to combat hunger.
Não podemos permitir que nossas crianças sejam vítimas dessa terrível realidade. Precisamos dá-la a voz e protegê-las com todo o nosso vigor.
We cannot allow our children to be victims of this reality. We need to give them a voice and protect them with all our strength.
Precisamos preservar as riquezas naturais da Amazônia, eliminar a pobreza e garantir os direitos das crianças.
We need to preserve the natural riches of the Amazon, eliminate poverty, and promote the children's rights.
Devemos lutar para o futuro melhor para todos, onde a prosperidade seja compartilhada.
We must fight for a better future for all, where prosperity is equitable for everyone.
É hora de nos unirmos com força e esperança e mudança positiva.
We want to get together with strength and positive hope.
Vamos levantar nossas vozes contra a exploração desordenada dos recursos naturais.
Let's raise our voices against the exploitation of natural resources,
Contra a pobreza dos irmãos e irmãs.
against the poverty that affects brothers and sisters.
Vamos proteger nossas crianças dos perigos da exploração, do abuso sexual e da fome.
Let's protect the children from exploitation, sexual abuse, and hunger.
Juntos podemos fazer a diferença. Juntos podemos preservar as riquezas naturais da Amazônia e construir um futuro digno para todos os seus habitantes.
Together, we can make a difference and we can preserve the natural riches of the Amazon while building a better future for all its people.
Vamos agir agora, antes que seja tarde demais.
Let's act right now before it's too late.
Chito Manito, muito obrigada.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Taisha, for sharing such insightful and wonderful remarks and for opening up this session. We'll now move on to our panel discussion where the speakers will share their remarks on a question. And I'll introduce the speakers and then they'll come up here one by one to share their remarks. So first we have Ingrid Jacobson. Ingrid is an advisor for food security, climate, and agriculture at Bread for the World. She's received her PhD in the topic of poverty-oriented urban development and developing countries, and her current work focuses on climate justice, land use, food security, and rural urban areas, and right to water. Our second speaker is Janice Hacking. Janice is the country representative for the Young Professionals for Agricultural Development. Janice holds a Bachelor's of Education. She's also a secondary school teacher, an African food fellow, an agripreneur, and her current work with youth engagement and sustainable food systems enables her to empower the youth to contribute in shaping sustainable food systems. And our final speaker, Jia Luen, is currently a doctor training in the field of emergency medicine and intensive care, and is from Malaysia and is an avid advocate for food nutrients and sustainable food choices. He's practiced a plant-based diet since 2007, believing that it is a healthier, sustainable, and compassionate way of living. And so now the question that's been posed to all three speakers, as they're just putting on their microphones right now. So let's see. Yes. All right. Sorry, 1 second. All right, so the question that's been posed to the speakers is,
yeah, you can use this one.
yeah, is how can a values-based approach, when put into action, allow for the transformation of food systems?
Can you use this? Sure. Yeah, like this.
So
Yeah. Perfect. Love it.
All right. No worries. All right, Ingrid, would you like to share remarks you have about that question?
Yes. So as Gabriela introduced me, I'm coming from Brand World, German Spanish Development Agency. And yeah, we are working with lots of partner organization in the so-called global south. So we do not implement ourselves, but we support organizations which are mostly working on the right to food. So the right to food is a human right, and it has so it's for everyone, and it has four pillars. It means that food must be there in a good quality, healthy quality. It must be there sufficient the whole year, and it must be appropriate to cultural habits. It must be adapted to it. So this is the basic principle. But we all know that food is not only about filling the stomachs. Food is a whole system. It's about consumers. It's about producers, sellers of food. It's about food waste management. So it's a whole system. And we are thinking, our partners are telling us that it's very important to put humans in the center. So the producers and the consumers must be in the center. And technical approaches are there to support, but there should not be the focus on what we are doing if it comes to food. And we think that a value-based approach is very much appropriate to put the people into the center. It's about the right to food. It's about food sovereignty. That means that people decide themselves where is the food coming from, how it is produced, how it is prepared, how it is consumed. This is the most important approach for us. So
Thank you, Ingrid. I'll pass it off to Janice now, maybe to continue any remarks that you have on the question.
Thank you. That's a very great question because for a long time we have not had the opportunity to just give the meaning of life, which as an African and as a Christian defines who we are. Our culture, our spirituality, our faith is our wholeness. And therefore, when you're talking about sustaining our food systems, you cannot look at it on its own. We have to see how it can connect with our wholeness. So I'd say that as we are not really just Christians and living the bit that we are not Africans. I'd say that as Africans, we are practicing both Christianity and our traditions or our culture. And there's a scholar called John Beatty who said that Africans are notoriously religious. So I'll look at it from that angle. How we give meaning and wholeness towards our contribution in sustaining our food systems informed by the values that is inculcated in us in those respective religions.
Thank you, Janice. Jayluan, would you like to continue?
So my name is Jalen. I think I'm part of the Buddhist charity group. So I think as a charity group, I think we don't deal much in terms of production or agriculture. I think we get involved a lot in disaster relief, and from our experience working with people in need and the victims, I think it comes back to the core principle. In terms of faith and culture, what drives us to make decisions? Well, no matter what decision we make today, is driven by a core value, whether it's to help others people, or we think about justice, we think about fairness and inclusiveness and everything else. All of this will come back to a core value for us is compassion and love. And I think these two words probably will echo with any other religions and faith, because at the end of the day, what we want is a better world. We want everyone to be included. So having a compassion moving forward to start the conversation, what can I do today to make someone else better? In the current climate in society, we're being pushed to think about how do I fulfill my personal interests first? Because if I can't be well myself, how can I help others? I think sometimes we forget to look back to say that actually we're quite privileged ourselves, and then we actually got capacity to help others, whether it's by a little or by a bit more. It doesn't matter what you contribute, but every single thought, every single action helps. So coming back towards the values, so I think for us in Sochi, we practice integrity, faithfulness, sincerity, and steadfastness. This is our core values when we encounter any victims or any project or missions that we encounter. This is our core values that drive our decision making and drive our action. And then oftentimes with a lot of objective targets, you might get misled at some point because there's so much challenges in life, so much other things that we need to think about, or get stray off. I think when we hold strong values in ourselves, we pull ourselves back into track. For example, like the Amazonian crisis, the crisis in Africa with food crisis. If you take a step back, how do I bring things together? Is to be compassionate, of next the person next to me and everybody else. Then you sort of bring it to the path to say that this is what we need to do, no matter what's the challenges, and it's a stronger value and anchor forward for difficult challenges and difficult conversations. So I think to conclude some of the things that we've discussed now, I think we've got two main projects or previous experiences. When one is during the Myanmar cyclone Nargis in 2004, if I remember correctly. So I think we helped the local farmers after they had cyclone, and then we provide funding and aid to help them on their feet. But we don't forget that they've also lost their livelihood. How do we support them to get back on their livelihood? Is to give them rice seeds, because these rice seeds helps them to grow back their culture, grow back their economy. And then what happens next is these victims are so grateful for these kind actions. They actually take upon themselves to save these rice seeds, all the harvest they've got, to help other people in need. You can see this cycle of positivity and cycle of love just perpetuates further down the line. It doesn't matter if you're privileged or underprivileged, because we all can help one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you so much to each of our speakers that have shared their remarks. I've really appreciated hearing how each of you has come from a different perspective, but also come to a similar conclusion about the importance of having values and applying them into our food systems, and how that there's a great need for this in particular. We've heard that, that we need to be looking at the food as a whole system. Right. We've also heard that spirituality plays an important role into these systems, and that values of compassion, justice, and fairness also play an important role in being able to guide our decisions. And so with this in mind, I wanted to pose a question to all three of our panelists, and anyone at any time, please feel free. Sort of these values mentioned and any other values that come to mind, what are practical ways of applying them into our food systems? If you have any experience on the ground of what that looked like, or any personal experience, please.
Thank you. I will give both scenarios as a Christian. We believe that we are created by God, and that life is the most valuable thing. And we are given a responsibility to worship God, also be co-creators with God. So then when we are worshiping, there are defined ways, offering of sacrifices and offerings. When you're giving sacrifices, you give the best. And so that really impacts in us in responsibly taking care of our animals and our plants, so that we give out the best. As co-creators, we are responsible to take care of our nature, to be innovative, to transform what has been given to us, and to also, biologically multiply and fill the earth. And on the other hand, as Africans, there are these different aspects on how we look at life. There's the spiritual aspect, there is the physical aspect, there's the social aspect, and there's the environmental aspect. Important to this discussion is the environmental aspect, where we look at the interrelationship or interconnectedness of both the non-living things and the living things. And therefore, we understand that it is the purpose that we are given in that hierarchy, where we depend on animals and plants for food. Animals and plants also depend on us to take good care of them. And so I'd say that is the values are what shape us in ensuring that we are responsible for our environment, and also ensure that this culture and the spirituality are thriving for a better generation. And if we harm our environment, we are harming the gods and the spirits and the ancestors. So we could say that that is the angle of looking at it, and we all have a responsibility to shape and ensure that the generations to come also grow up and understand some of these values, because it is our main responsibility. Yeah.
Okay, then I will go on. So, yeah, if we want to transform our food systems into value-based systems, yeah, then we have to approach it in a holistic way. So I think the basis again is the right to food, but it's also the preservation of creation. It means biodiversity and look into the future. And this is very important, but it's also about inclusivity. So everybody, each person should benefit, should be part of a food system, and it's about gender. And yeah, it's always said, but very often it sounds like empty words. So to put it into place, I think the justice aspect is very important. So if people want to produce their own food in sovereignty, they have to get access to land, they have to get access to water, they have to get access to seed, traditional seeds, they have to get access to and consultation, and they must have the possibility to organize themselves. There are many aspects involved into it. And when we work with our partners, we try to support them to make valid all these aspects, that they have access to food, and in this way, it's also a political question. It's not only value based, but it's political, because it happens that all the people lose their access to land, to water, to food, to seeds, gender balance, all this. And I think we have to fight that it remains like that, or even become better than it is like now.
Thank you. And carrying from the question that's been put out. So I think in terms of the value, I think I've probably heard me mention earlier, we talk about nutrition. And I think this can be implemented on a personal level, a societal level, and even a global level. So on a personal level, for example, I'm personally I practice plant-based diet. One of the reasons we believe all sentient beings are worth looked out for. And then it might be difficult for a certain group or culture because diet can be very diverse across the globe. But the important thing is, what can we do to reduce carbon emissions? And one of the one way to do it, because we spend so much carbon emissions in food production. So to be responsible consumer, think about what we eat. And for me, being a plant-based diet helps because we try to source locally. We try to eat something that doesn't too much carbon emissions. That is our individual role with reducing carbon emissions and hopefully change to a just transition food system. On societal level, we come across different communities that struggle with agriculture. And then one of the example that we have in Africa, actually in Mozambique, is we actually help the local farmers to grow crops because they have so much food poverty. The way to carry on is to be self-sufficient. Instead of relying on external support, how can we make the locals more sufficient? And then from there, once they become a recipient of help, they actually transform to be a giver of help because they start noticing their community, their next door neighbor community also needs help. And how does that? And compassion is a driving force to make them look out for the other people, and then they make the change needed. And I think that's the time.
Yes, it's time. Thank you so much to each of our speakers for your remarks. Very grateful, very insightful. And so to continue this conversation now, there'll be a person that's posed on the screen in the PowerPoint for both the speakers and the audience. I think, yes. So what principles or values are important for the transformation of food systems? So if there's any speakers who would like to have any remarks, please go ahead. Also, this is open to anyone in the audience. Please raise your hand and the mic will be brought to you.
There's 3 hands.
Yeah.
There were 3 hands.
Question, sorry.
Hi, I really appreciate this panel and understanding like the value aspect of food systems. I think value in general, when we're talking about climate change or any kind of systemic change that needs to take place, it's important to think about the mindset that's coming into those changes, and values is a great way to capture that. I think particularly when we're thinking about food systems, looking into the holistic approaches to it, because kind of what we were alluding to in this conversation, switching to something like a plant-based diet, one example of this, is not only it might be an individual choice, but it also intersects with climate. It also intersects with health. And these are all different things that are contributing to a better food system that are all through one shift. And I think that's kind of like one way to integrate into this question is understanding the holistic picture of how all the different sectors and how they interplay into our food systems.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cecilia. I'm a representative with the Baha'i International Community, and I'm very happy to be with you all. Thank you so much to our speakers. I think one of the principles that would kind of be an overarching element of the food systems landscape would be justice in terms of both access to food from an intergenerational point so that all people of a community have access, but then also treating our relationship with the natural world with justice. So how are we navigating the food systems in a way that creates sustainability, that access is prolonged for all people, and that the way in which we we plant and we deal with the fields is done in a way that is sustainable and also protecting of the soil. So I think justice would be the principle.
Thank you. Anyone else for any questions, remarks, comments?
Thank you so much to the panelists. My name is Jenna Tesdall. I'm the director of YPARD, and I just wanted to make a small comment on behalf of our organization because, as you know, we're not a faith-based organization. But I think as a network, the connection between human beings and the care for each other is what drives the cohesion in our network. And it drives our passion for climate action, for sustainable food systems. And so that's why we are so happy to be having this event with all of you and to be hearing the diverse perspectives of our speakers. So I just wanted to have a word of thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any remarks? Yes, I think there's one over here.
Hi, my name is Jiu. So I think for transformation of food system, I think what like part of it is about education, especially regarding the next generation, because in order to break through the cycles, we need to like involve more young generation in decision making and also getting to know what is part of the food system in order for us to innovate and getting like new ideas, better solutions for this transformation. Yeah, that's my remark.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, I'm Glendies. I'm also part of the Young Professionals for Agriculture Development at YPARD. Love the question, not because I also support it, but I think it's a good question to have here. I think one point that maybe it would be nice to also add is accountability as part of this discussion as well. We talk a lot about cohesion is important, community building is important, education is important, but accountability, are we holding each other accountable in the process as well? Oftentimes we talk about food systems transformation in this process, but if there's no accountability of keeping one another on track, then we're not going to get anywhere. So I think those are one of the values But I think which goes with integrity. I think one of the panelists mentioned it a couple of times. The idea of integrity also goes in hand with accountability.
Thank you. Any other final remarks?
I think I'll just add one more. And I think there's so much value being shared with across different diverse panels. And then we talk about interconnectedness, we talk about compassion, we talk about empathy. And then the one thing I was going to add is about actually empathy, because I think there's a lot of communication among people. There's also communication with nature. So being empathetic to each other, not just each other, but also our living surroundings, that gives a better insight into what we need to do. And when we have connection, when we realize we're actually interconnected and interdependent on each other, we think about making changes for each other. And alone, we don't go too far. We can't go far alone, but together we can go further. We can go longer. It's a team. It's everyone living on the world. It's one family.
Janice, would you like to add anything?
Thank you. I think it's important to also, as we harness the power of collaboration, we put in mind faith-based organizations and also culture-based communities, because they are able to use the values that are instilled in them to take care of what we all are championing for. And all these values, they are interconnected. We cannot speak about love and fail to mention empathy and justice and accountability. They are all interrelated. So as we are, working so much with networks, working so much with trauma-based organizations, let us shift focus again to the faith-based so that we have an all-inclusive system and discussions and diverse views.
Thank you. And Ingrid, would you like to add any final remarks?
Yes, I think food systems are working very well. If people who are part of the food systems are interconnected, have empathy for each other, have a common idea of food, but it's also about the environment. It's about, like you said, holding people accountable, making it possible, because food systems, holistic ones, are also threatened at the moment. And therefore, people also have to organize themselves that they can keep their internal values and bring them outside and organize themselves.
Thank you to our speakers and everyone in the audience who participated in this interactive component. Now I'd like to invite our speaker who will do concluding remarks. So Michelle is the Regional Director and External Engagement and Advocacy for World Vision in Latin America. And she advocates for children's rights and eliminate all forms of violence against children. And her work also advocates to ensure inclusive access to children, education, health, nutrition, and sustainable livelihoods. Yes, Michelle, please come up for the remarks.
Well, first of all, thank you, Gabriela, for your moderation, and to all panelists. And it's so inspiring to listen when we're speaking about food systems, going beyond the technicalities of food systems and bringing into the discussion the importance of spirituality, the centrality of spirituality when speaking about food systems. And I would like just to go over some of the values that were referred to in this discussion. First, Thais and Ingrid had as a common grounds as food systems should be respectful of culture, but as well having the clarity that this is access to a fundamental right to every human being. I would like to also speak about what Ingrid said about access to food as a fundamental right, not only in terms of quality, but also sufficient, but as well culturally appropriate production. And of course, encompassing all actors of the food system. And one key issue here was food sovereignty, where each one of the people should be able to decide the ways they produce and how to distribute and what food they want to have access in order to enhance the way of lives. Here I take note of what both Janice and Julong said about food systems to be interconnected, not only as individuals, but as well as a society. And of course, this speaks about the empathy to the system of which we're part of. In the face of the crisis, how we need to be compassionate. It's so important when we're seeing the rising of humanitarian crisis around the world, the importance of being compassionate, to guide the decision making and how to perpetuate the cycle of love. Decisions should be driven by justice, by fairness, by inclusiveness in terms of gender, of ethnicity, of course, and also have as common ground the faith, which brings integrity and steadfastness. From a spiritual standpoint, the importance of taking care of creation as a central part of how to manage properly and be good stewards of food systems. How can we preserve biodiversity? Again, not only from the technicalities, but taking care of each other as part of the food system and taking care, of course, of the whole food system. The interrelation of good to be good stewards of natural goods to shape how coming generations will interrelate and interact, of course, with the nature. Inclusion also, where all benefit from the goods of biodiversity, not only to the means of production, but as well to those technologies, innovations, and creative ways to ensure the access of everyone to food. And finally, I would like here to remember again some of the values that you mentioned. Education as a means to shape the way in which the future generations will be producing. Accountability from each other as individuals, accountability to our authorities, and of course, the power of collaboration. Collaboration between cultures which have different and enhanced manners of producing, distributing, and ensuring the access to food, and collaboration, of course, with the faith-based organizations. I would like again to thank each and every one of you for being here. Thank you again, Gabriela, for your moderation. Thank you, everyone, for being in this panel. Good afternoon.
Baby